Final Fantasy VII Remake intergrade footage has finally appeared on the Nintendo Switch 2, running portably at some recent events for fans to get hands-on time, and now you guys can see it running in all of its glory. And with this, Final Fantasy VII Remake intergrade, when it comes to how it runs, how it looks, gets me extremely excited for what Monolith Soft is going to do next, because we can see what this little system is capable of. Well, it's kind of like a little big system, to be honest. I mean, it's a little system in terms of being able to run stuff like Cyberpunk 2077 and Final Fantasy VII Remake pretty good, but then at the same time, it's also kind of like nowhere near the size of the other systems that are running these games. But let's talk about this and a bit more. So we recently got some handheld footage of Final Fantasy VII Remake intergrade recently, and it looks like it runs really good. But the original source of the video is from Deck Wizard, and pretty much what you can see here is incredibly smooth gameplay overall. You're seeing it like it's very much like it was on the PlayStation 4 Pro. It doesn't seem like it's running at the 60 FPS that is the PlayStation 5 version of the game, but I think that, of course, for a hybrid system overall, making sure it's stable, making sure that everything is good, and your inputs more so than anything, those are the biggest things that need to be good with this game. But overall, looking good. This right here just shows me that I am super excited for, one, the future of Final Fantasy when it comes to Nintendo platforms, but also, two, what Monolith Soft can do, because this looks incredible running on the Nintendo Switch 2, and you know Monolith Soft has had, one, super long access to the hardware, their first-party studios, so they probably got access just as fast as anyone else over at Nintendo, because Monolith Soft also helps make Zelda, they help make Animal Crossing, they help make Splatoon, they help make all these other big first-party games for Nintendo. So Monolith Soft obviously was very much in the know when it comes to Nintendo Switch 2, so you know that they've been working on something incredible. Their next RPG is apparently going to be a game that is different from what they've done in the past. So different from Xenoblade, different from Xenosaga, different from Xenogears, different from some of their staples that made them one of the best studios in the industry. So this is just super exciting times for Nintendo fans, for RPG fans, to be able to play a portable version of FF7 coated to the metal with the Nintendo Switch 2 built or ported specifically to it without the PC portable shenanigans, and hopefully with an actual real physical cartridge, although I'm not super confident that Square Enix is going to drop the cash for a 64 gigabyte cartridge, but I'm hoping that they do. I think that this would be the ultimate version of Final Fantasy VII Remake Integrate if they did, because it'd be able to be played anywhere, no problem, without streaming, and actually be fully on the cart with a real physical cartridge that plays off of it, and not something to where you have to download the data to your hard drive. That's kind of like halfway in between when it comes to physical, or obviously game key card, which would be the not great so option. So for me, I'm hoping that that is the case, but we'll have to wait and see. I'm looking forward to the game regardless. I think it's going to be really, really good. And I already played it back on the PlayStation 4 Pro when it came out in 2020. I have the PlayStation 5 version, and I think that it's just going to be another game that I'm probably going to go through, check it out on the Nintendo Switch 2, see how it runs, see how it plays, and just experience it again, because it has been about 5 years or so since that original game came out on PlayStation 4 back then. So I'm super excited, and this is definitely good to see overall with this. So shout outs to Deck Wizard and everybody that let me know about it. But before we get into the next big thing with Final Fantasy, because there is more overall, please make sure you hit that like button and subscribe if you are someone new. Click that notification bell to get my RPG vids, Nintendo Switch 2 content as soon as it drops. And let me know what you're looking forward to the most when it comes to Final Fantasy VII Remake or other games on Switch 2. So let's get into this next thing here, because this, once again, Square Enix, they are going in when it comes to Final Fantasy and the Nintendo Switch 2. So Yoshi P has stated that he's had positive discussions with Nintendo about bringing Final Fantasy 14 to the Nintendo Switch 2. Quote, "So to this end, we have been discussing with Nintendo, and the discussions have been positive. So I do hope that players will look forward to hopefully good news in the future." He also says he considers the possibility of Final Fantasy 16 on Switch 2 very positively as well, but needs more time. So what does this tell you? This is something that I've been talking about now for years when it comes to Square Enix. This is something that some people had denial about overall with Square Enix and the direction that they were going. Let's just call a spade for a spade. The changing landscapes of the gaming industry and of what happened in Japan when it comes to the shift of what people are playing RPGs on, when it comes down to it, from PlayStation to a more balanced look overall, especially Japanese RPGs over to Nintendo, that definitely hit Square Enix hard. Their games that they hoped would have had massive followings in Japan and worldwide when it comes to Final Fantasy are not getting that same traction. They're not building that same repertoire with children growing up playing the games. They're not getting the same type of pull that they used to get in the PS1, PS2, and somewhat PS3 era. It's just not happening that way anymore, and they had to change things up in order to survive. And that's the reason why they've went with a whole new strategy with having multi-platform development, but more importantly, making sure that they get in on the ground level with the Nintendo Switch 2 and grow with the audience. That's something that Square Enix, I know for a fact, definitely needed to do. This is why Yoshi P keeps on saying, hey, look, we're talking with Nintendo. Final Fantasy 14, we want to get it on there. Final Fantasy 16, we want to get it on there. Final Fantasy 7 Remake, we want it on there. Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth, we want it on there. And from the beginning, Square Enix started porting over a ton of their games to Nintendo Switch 2, whereas with the Switch 1, we had to wait years for multiple Switch ports to come over because they just did not believe in the system, and they were kind of all in on PlayStation with the Final Fantasy games. Clearly, that did not work out the way that they wanted it to work out with Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth and Final Fantasy 16. Square Enix can see the same exact sales that we can see when it comes to the Famitsu overall. And they can see that the Nintendo Switch 2 is dominating the market. They saw this beforehand when they knew that they needed to change because the Nintendo Switch 1 dominated the Japanese market as the best-selling system of all time there. Imagine if Square Enix had a custom-built Final Fantasy game for the Nintendo Switch 1 and that was released in Japan. How much more money they could have made on that game selling it for $60 and probably getting a lot of sales overall. I think that that was a mistake that they knew that they made, and this is the reason why Yoshi P is so eager to bring over this stuff, whereas before he barely even talked about Nintendo in the 2020s, 2021, 2022. He never even mentioned them too much. I mean, there was sometimes where he said, okay, yeah, we want to, but it was really all focused on PlayStation and the games that were coming out as console exclusives first and foremost for that system. Obviously, they had a president change. They completely changed up their business plan. They completely want to go multi-platform, and they've made that be known. But the Nintendo Switch 2 is going to be a very vital aspect in what their resuscitation is going to be after changing up their business plans and focusing on what works and kind of shedding off all the other stuff that doesn't work. So this is essentially part of all of the plan when it comes to what Square Enix is going to be doing on the Nintendo Switch 2. And of course, I'm super excited in terms of what we can see on the system just because RPG developers have been on one recently, and I don't think it's going to stop here. We're getting great news when it comes to a lot of different RPGs and what is happening overall for the Switch 2 and of course overall for all platforms. So very good there. Now let's go ahead and get into the next topic here, guys. We're going to discuss just briefly a bit more when it comes to Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. If you didn't see my video talking about the ESRB rating, we got a little bit more of an update. Riley Little on Twitter also stated this. Also, more confirmation that Metroid Prime 4 Beyond is coming in 2025. So there is a thing here from the recent events, Gamescom and stuff like that. Fan Expo is also going on here. Yeah, this one's from Fan Expo Canada. That's where you're seeing some of this new footage of like Borderlands or Elden Ring or some of these other games and all that. And it says Nintendo Switch 2. Welcome to Nintendo Switch 2 at Fan Expo. Line up here to play up to 3 featured titles on the Nintendo Switch 2 system. So you could pick between Borderlands 4, Elden Ring, Hades 2, Street Fighter 6, Fighters Edition, Mario Kart World, Donkey Kong Bonanza, Kirby and the Forgotten Land, Switch 2 Edition plus Star-Crossed World, and Metroid Prime 4 Beyond, which people are playing, but I don't think they're allowing footage of that one. You're not allowed to capture footage of it. That's why we haven't seen much of it, but the impressions from people there are, it's really fast, it's really cool, it's awesome, blah, 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 whatever, right? People are saying that it's great, and it's pretty much the same demo that we got before that Nintendo's done earlier in the year with Metroid Prime, and it's, I think, the same demo that maybe is going on at Gamescom, but don't quote me on all of that. But anyway, Nintendo once again says it's coming 2025. So there has been some discussion, some talk, whether it's going to make 2025 or not. And listen, guys, it's game development. Obviously, anything could happen. There could be something that drastically happens with a bug that they can't fix and they have to delay it. Otherwise, it's going to be terrible and all this stuff, whatever, right? So that's clear that anything could happen. But Nintendo has reconfirmed once again 2025. I think that the ESRB rating plus this right here and the fact that the game is playable at multiple different events kind of shows that it's probably going to be still 2025. People just don't know where it's going to slot in because Kirby Air Riders, for example, is a November 20th release. So where does that put Metroid? Does it put it after in December? Does it put it before in October? Pokemon Legends ZA comes out in October, so are they going to double up between October or November? So all of that is a possibility because Metroid Prime 4 is a very different game from Pokemon Legends ZA. It's very different from Kirby Air Riders, very different from Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment if that comes out this year in December. So that's why I think that it's very much possible that they double up, and they've done it before. Like I stated in previous videos, Metroid Dread, Mario Party Superstars, those both came out in the same month in October back in 2021. So they could be looking to do the same thing here, and Metroid Dread sales was not impacted by Mario Party Superstars and vice versa. Very different types of games, different audiences overall, with probably little crossover when it comes down to it. So I think that could be the same thing here with Metroid Prime 4 Beyond and Kirby Air Riders, or with Hyrule Warriors, or with Pokemon Legends ZA. So what do you guys think about this when it comes to what's happening here? The Fan Expo Canada, Nintendo confirming once again 2025, but we will see. Let me know in the comment section below. Well, let's now go ahead and move over to a frame rate comparison with the most recent demo release of Trails in the Sky First Chapter. This is one of my most anticipated games coming over to the Nintendo Switch 2 now that we have a confirmation. It's almost like they listened to everything that I said when it comes to Falcom and developing this game, because shoutouts to Game Coma Frame over on Twitter. This is translated from Japanese, but they did a quick frame rate analysis and test in various different areas with the Nintendo Switch 1 version, the Nintendo Switch 2 version, but it's really the Switch 1 version running on the Nintendo Switch 2 via backwards compatibility, the PlayStation 5 version of the game in the 60 FPS mode, and then the PS5 version of the game running in the high frame rate mode, which is up to 120 FPS, but a softer look. The visuals aren't as good overall, and it's interesting to see all of this and how things kind of play out. If you look at the Nintendo Switch 1 version running on the Nintendo Switch 2, it's at 60 FPS without any type of patch or anything like that. So that's definitely good. But remember, there will be a Nintendo Switch 2 version for $1 as an upgrade. Trails in the Sky First Chapter, definitely a consumer-friendly move there, a $1 upgrade from Switch 1 to Switch 2, so you can pick up the Nintendo Switch 1 cartridge of the game, and then you can upgrade it for $1 on there to the Nintendo Switch 2. So if you want to play it that way, that'll be pretty good. Or if you don't want to pay the $1, you can just play the Switch 1 version on Switch 2. But remember, you're not going to get all of the graphical resolution and enhancements and updates that you would get if you get that, because I'm guessing that the Nintendo Switch 2 version is more closer to the PS5 version of the game overall with visuals and everything, whereas the Nintendo Switch 1 version running on Switch 2 is going to look very much like the Switch 1 game, but run at a better frame rate. As you can see here, it hits 60, but there's some dips here and there when the action gets kind of crazy. The Switch 1 version of the game runs at 30, but definitely dips when there's kind of crazy stuff going on. And the PS5 version seems to be pretty much 60 overall, whereas the high frame rate, 120 FPS mode, can kind of swing here and there. So there's lots of options. This is probably, I would say, one of the better games overall from what I've heard, from what I've seen when it comes to Falcom and what they've done. And it's a perfect place to start. If you've never played the Trails series, this is the place to start. Or if you've played some of the other ones and want to start at the beginning, this is where to get it done. So I highly recommend this. It's coming out on September 19th worldwide. So September is going to be packed when it comes to games. Hollow Knight, Silksong, Daemon X Machina, Titanic Scion, and of course this game as well with Trails in the Sky first chapter. So a lot, and I don't know if I'm going to have time to play all the games. I can just say that right now at this point, but it's really cool to see this running good on pretty much most platforms that people are going to play it on. Switch One is not incredible, but I guess it's passable for what Switch One is. But what do you guys think overall when it comes to everything that we talked about here? Let me know in the comment section below. All right, guys, that wraps it up for this video here. Thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate it. Please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're someone new, click that notification bell, and check out my other Nintendo Switch 2 RPG content and more right here on screen. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll catch you guys for the next one. Peace.